am Maddie Sloane and welcome to Snap Happy, the photography show. We have a very special show for you today. Darran Leal is back in Alaska and he's taking us to Anan Creek, where we'll get up close and personal to some wild bears. Very exciting stuff. But first, let's meet our feature photographer of the week. For over 30 years, Mark Gaylor has been at the forefront of photographic technology. He's always been an early adopter of new photo technology and even worked with the very first ever DSLR in 1991. It was a whopping 1.3 megapixel and cost over $45,000. So Mark, what excites you about new technology?
Look, it's been a lifelong passion really. When I was an undergraduate at college, I kept on asking the lecturers, can I do this? And they would say, no, or you need more expensive gear. And so it's always been a challenge, waiting to get gear that's capable of doing really exciting stuff. And I think that day has dawned now with the gear I'm currently using.
So you've travelled around the world on a motorcycle. How did that help shape your career?
Well, it was sort of an escape plan originally. I found myself doing too much work in dark rooms and I really wanted to be out there.
What better escape?
Yes, right, go around the world on a motorcycle. What it did was it fueled my interest in new lands, new cultures. It was a way of collecting stories and then communicating them, and what better way than using a camera to tell visual stories.
Beautiful. And speaking of visual stories, you've been able to share your knowledge with people through publishing 30 books. Tell us about that.
This is showing my age now. I published 30 books for a publisher called
Just
Focal
a casual
Press.
30.
30 makes me sound like a Mills and Boon author, doesn't it? The reason there were so many was the technology was changing so quickly. By the time book one was a year old, the technology had changed, so I ended up having to
keep writing.
book two. And we're looking at an era that predates YouTube and Facebook, where people can gather information easily accessible now. Now that I've stopped writing books, of course, that information is available on my own YouTube channel and my own website, and there's no cost for that. It's just I love sharing.
So your photographic genre is very broad. Tell us about that.
I don't have like one thing, like I'm not astro or I'm not birds or whatever. My background is really editorial, from that telling of photo narratives, photo stories. And like any sort of good visual story, there's the establishing shot, the location, there's the people in that, so that's a mixture of what are they doing, and the portraits, the tight headshots. And I've also got an interest now in high-speeding action, the difficult end.
Nice.
But actually it's not so difficult these days, because the technology is making it much more accessible for people with entry-level cameras.
Perfect. So what system are you currently using?
Currently using a Sony full-frame mirrorless system. I think the system is very mature, so I managed to leave all of the DSLR, DSLT technology behind, and now the only gear I carry is the mirrorless stuff. The amazing thing about this technology, the full-frame sensors have this huge dynamic range that we very rarely lose any information in the brightest of highlights or the shadows. And what's also happened over the last few years with mirrorless is the autofocus systems have been getting better and better. And even on Sony's entry-level full-frame camera, the A7 III, it can perform like the most expensive sports DSLRs out there. We've got something like 693 autofocus points. It covers like 98% of the sensor. It really is amazing that somebody who gets into these entry-level full-frame mirrorless cameras can go and shoot high-action sports, fast-action wildlife. It's just really exciting to be a photographer at this time.
So where to next?
To think that photography has ever arrived, I think, is a mistake. Because I've been around enough change now to find change exciting. Like, I remember when I was making that transition from analog to digital, and I bought my first full-frame mirrorless camera, that I was amazed that I could shoot a lyrebird in a forest at 6,400 ISO, handheld, and yet it could go double-page spread in a magazine. And I started my career on Kodachrome 64, that's 64 ISO. We're looking at sensors now opening up the new doors. We're looking at things like organic sensors, sensors that can photograph by starlight, global shutters with no shutter distortion. There's certainly lots more doors to open.
Thanks so much, Mark. Well, stick around, because coming up, Mark will be showing us what's in his kit and giving us some handy tips.
You've probably heard of HDR, high dynamic range, which is, these techniques. It's a piece of software that turns those 3 or 5 pictures into a beautiful image with lots of tonality. They're not always that beautiful. I find that they sometimes look a little bit like a cartoon, and they're not quite what I like. So I prefer to do it the old-fashioned way. But look, let's show you how to do it HDR, and then we'll have a look at it in Photoshop as well.
All right.
Here's an average shot where the sky's a little bit too light and the foreground's a little bit too dark. So what we would do is we'd take an exposure for the sky that looks a little bit like this, and the sky looks great, but the foreground is way too dark. So now we take a third photograph, and that's going to be exposing correctly for the foreground, but now the sky is too light, because that's the limitation. Now, some modern cameras, if you're quick and you haven't got time, some modern phones have got a special HDR feature that does all of this for you in camera. But let's just show you how easy it is to turn this into an HDR using Lightroom as a starting point. All we do is just select the 3 images that we want to play with, and we come up to Photo, and we go to Photo Merge, HDR, and you press merge and it does its business.
So the blues have come in up here, and it's kept the moon.
So as you can see, it's done quite a good job. Let's just compare that.
Way too dark on the
and you can see that's the average exposure, and you can see that the HDR has improved it. But it's added in a little bit of colour, the colour's quite different. You lose a little bit of control using HDR. So let's open these files in Photoshop, and you can do that automatically within Lightroom. So Lightroom will open it for you. Select the 3 images, we come up to Photo, and it just comes down to Edit in Photoshop, but you can see down the bottom, Open as Layers in Photoshop. And that's what we want to do. So here we are in Photoshop, and this does require a little bit of understanding of Photoshop. So this is for our more advanced viewers. So I've got Photoshop, and you can see 3 layers, and I can turn the layers off. And it's just like having 3 photos, one on top of the other. My light layer down below, my middle layer in the middle, and my darker exposure up the top. I can probably actually get rid of the middle layer. Some people do, some people don't. Let's just get rid of that to make life easy. Now on my top layer, I'm going to add a mask, because what I want to do is I want to have the dark sky on top, but I want to mask out, I want to get rid of the dark landscape down below. So I add the mask, that's using this little square with a circle down the bottom, and that's added a white mask. White reveals, everything can be seen, black conceals. And now I'm just going to, I'm making sure I've got a black brush, paint along the bottom there.
Oh, look
and
at
you
that,
can see,
instantly.
And I can also then go and add in adjustment layers later on to lighten and darken and have full control. This is why I prefer Photoshop, because I'm just lightening the areas that I want to. Whereas HDR lightens areas everywhere and darkens areas everywhere. This just gives us a lot more control. And as you can see, it's pretty cool.
And it's not too technical, like you've only got the 3 layers going on.
That's right, and we can minimise it down to 2. One of the tricks I would suggest that when you're in the field is that when you do your exposure, you go -2 stops or -2 EV. You've got your exposure compensation dial, go to -2 rather than -1, and go to +2 rather than +1. One's just not enough of a difference to make a difference.
Love that tip, Peter, especially because I use Photoshop myself, so I'd be going this avenue. I can't wait to see what you do next week.
Me too.
Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor, Sony Global Imaging Ambassador. I'd like to take the opportunity to walk you through my mirrorless camera kit. And the first thing that I need to pull out, of course, is my 3rd generation A7 camera. Now, I've got attached a 35mm f2.8. It's a small package that I can handhold all day. Because I'm using an interchangeable lens camera system, of course, it wouldn't really make sense if I didn't have more lenses in my bag. The first thing that I've got here is an 85mm f1.8 lens. Now, this is one of my favorite lenses just because it gives me that figure ground separation when I'm doing tight head and shoulder portraits. Now, the third lens that I have in this bag is a 1635 f2.8 GM. This is their premium quality glass. This is for people who really love their landscapes. It gives us that wide field of view, it gives us that deep perspective, and it's pin sharp corner to corner. Of course, the bag isn't quite empty yet. This bag will take an iPad, or alternatively, we can actually use a hard drive that is able to back up the data that we're shooting as we're working. Now, some people will say, but where's the tripod? And I do in fact carry a tripod as well. Obviously it's not got very long legs, but this doesn't worry me because if I'm doing those long exposures, typically my favorite vantage point for these tripods is going to be on the ground or very close. Another thing that's probably not included in this 3 lens kit is this one that I have over here. Now, admittedly it's a little bit larger, but this has got a lot of reach. So if you're going out on, say, an African safari, or you're photographing whales or birds, this lens is going to give me the reach. It's a 100-400 GM lens. I've actually got a 1.4 teleconverter on this lens that extends out the reach to 560 millimeters. I'm Mark Gaylor, Sony Global Imaging Ambassador. If you need support with your Sony Alpha systems, just catch up with me on YouTube or on my website. All of the information will help you become a more creative photographer.
We've just arrived from Wrangell and Brenda, our local guide, has brought us into this stunning rainforest. It's one of the prettiest rainforests I think in the world, but it's not the rainforest that we're here for. We're actually here for bears.
Walked through about a half a mile through a pretty good trail in what I think is one of the most beautiful walks in southeast Alaska.
There was a bear that did come on the track at one stage, but we just waited until the bear went off its own way, and that was no problem.
I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but you know you've got to be really careful because the guide has a gun and bear spray, and you know you've got to stay together and keep moving and get to the viewing platform as quickly as you can without any interruption. So that's a sense of anticipation. You're sort of going, what's going to happen next? And then when you get up there, it is just amazing.
Here we are at Anan Creek, and we've got literally bears all around us at the moment. We can shoot 360 degrees. So we've got a brown bear just turned up down the creek from us. Everyone's shooting that. We've got cubs to the right. We've got males fighting to the left. Down here right now, I can see thousands of salmon coming through. We've got eagles just here and bears all together. There's all sorts of action happening, and I need to get out there and start shooting myself.
I didn't know which way to look or where to focus or how many photos to take.
Someone's pointing over there and someone's pointing over there, and your head's on a swivel.
To be photographing that bear there and have someone tap you on the shoulder because there's one at your shoulder and just step back, that was a bit surreal.
It's just an opportunity that you don't often get to watch bears in a natural setting, wild bears, but get to see so much of their daily life from this unique perspective that we have here.
One of these unique perspectives takes us down to creek level. And we're in the hide, and the hide's a special place. You have to keep quiet. Only 5 photographers at any given time, and the bears are literally just 5-6 metres away. There's also at the moment a couple of bald eagles, and they're all here because of the salmon run. And there's literally thousands and thousands of salmon in the creek trying to come up, and of course these predators are feeding on them. Settings wise, again, KISS principle, aperture priority, 5.6. Because the light's a little low, we're going to go 800 ISO, and we might even go higher to 1600 ISO. But there's some stunning photos here at the moment.
To get so close in that hide to shoot the bears, getting the fish was just amazing. I never thought I'd have that sort of opportunity to be able to do that.
Predominantly we've been going for fast shutter speeds, but there's so much happening that if you're not keeping your eyes open to the opportunities, you'll miss unique photos. So we've actually got a bear that's hiding under the waterfall in a cave sort of thing. It's caught a fish, and instead of doing a fast shutter speed, I actually did the opposite and dropped my ISO down to 50 ISO and my aperture down to f22. And so my shutter speed was very slow, and the results are quite unique. We just had a cub go up a tree. There was a bit of danger for the cub, another bear involved. So Mum came in, scared the other bear away, and the two eventually came back together. Really cute photograph.
Literally, you can think of the line, I'm just hanging around, and they were just so gorgeous. And the two seemed to know that they were siblings. To my mind, they were looking after each other. If one went around the trunk, the other one tried to follow. They were just absolutely gorgeous.
The mum actually nursed the cub, which was extremely rare, so we're getting some really spectacular photographs today. With running water, we can actually do slower shutter speeds, and today's technology allows us to do image stabilisation at slow shutter speeds. So I've been doing some shutter speeds as slow as 1 second. I'm holding the camera in such a way that I'm locking myself up, being as stable as possible. The bear hopefully won't move, but the water is running. You end up with a very creative result that hopefully everyone likes, and in particular you might like yourself. We had a beautiful experience earlier where we had a brown bear. Literally, I've never seen it in my life before. He's jumping through the water. He was snorkeling in a human type way. It was very funny, lots of great photographs. We're all taking turns to get some photographs. So there's a few people here, limited to 60 per day. But our key goal is get photographs, yes, but of course enjoy it as well.
There's not very many places in the wild where you can get that sort of up-close proximity to watch bears in a completely natural setting.
It's just so special.
Earlier in the series, James Treble gave us some tips on how to decorate a living space with our prints, but now he's back to help us decorate a nursery.
Raising a family is so important to all of us, and it's actually been a few years since I've been in a nursery because my kids now are like this big. But it's also a beautiful time because dressing up the nursery is all about getting the new baby used to your family and identifying who they are. And what's better to do that than pictures of the family? Now, this room has got 4 walls and a roof, but it's pretty stock standard, and I want to add some colour. So to pick which wall I'm going to do that from, it's pretty easy because my door's just there, and this beautiful blank canvas, being such a big wall, is the wall I want to dress. Another safety issue is I don't really want to have any prints hanging above the cot, not yet. So it's making this wall the perfect option. Now we've got these fantastic canvas prints that are actually from the photographer of this house, and this is his family, little baby brother and big brother. Now this is a great time to start putting the artwork on the wall, and because these are lightweight, they're very easy to hang. But I've got a great tip. Before you place them on the wall, lay them out on the floor so that you can work out the shape that you're looking for. In this case, I've got some that are horizontal and some that are vertical. By laying them out, I can understand how I want it to work. And an important thing to remember here is I have an angled roof. So the placement on the wall, I want to sort of play with that line. I'm pretty happy with how the layout looks. You don't have to be too strict, so I'm not going to bother measuring them. It's just to give you an idea. And you'll see that I placed this one higher because my wall angles to that side, so it's going to sit well on the wall. Now I'm going to use some adhesive hooks and start putting them up. So what do you think? It's added great contrast and interest to this room, and you can see by angling it slightly on the right hand side, I've followed the line of the roof. Now it's a great time for baby George to get used to his family. So these shelves are screaming to be styled. There's already a little bit of baby stuff going on here, but I want to add some colour. And when I was little, I grew up with golden books where I could see all of the colour and animals from around the world. But you should check out the photography that this homeowner's got. So what do you think? You couldn't get more vibrant than that, could you? This is a really exciting time for the little baby from the cot to start to see colour, shapes and wildlife. And why not bring some of your own photography into the baby's room? The thing that I really love about these photo blocks is that there's so many options to display them. Because they're 3-dimensional, you can just sit them onto a surface like that and they'll hold up themselves. They also have hooks on the back so that you can hang them on a wall. But what's really good is that they also have the screws with giving you an option to put in a beautiful standing base so that you can sit them on a vertical surface without them falling over. So what do you think? It's a lot lighter and brighter in here, just like a baby's room should look. Now what are you waiting for? Why don't you get out in nature, take some photos yourself, and you can have a beautiful space just like this at your home.
The canvas prints and photo blocks used today were ordered from the Snapfish website. There are so many different options for printing your photos, and it's really easy to place an order. So what are you waiting for? Happy decorating! So Mark, here on Snap Happy, we like to ask our guests to give us some handy tips on how we can improve our photography. Now we're on the beautiful Fraser Island all week for the Creative Photo Workshop, and I'm having a bit of trouble because we've photographed everything this week.
That's right.
We've got eagles, we've got shells,
Yep.
we've got landscape, and I'm having some trouble with the settings. I just don't know how to keep up.
Okay, so we've been guiding the participants in the best settings, but sometimes when we change from shooting a shell on a beach to a dingo running along a beach, we need to change several settings all in an instant. So I think the best tip I can give is using the memory feature on your camera. Sometimes we can memorize groups of settings and just put them on a number on the top
beautiful.
of the camera.
So that would help me.
Yeah, so I can go from shooting a shell, just say number 1, action, dingoes, and then knowing that I've got all of the settings that are appropriate now for fast action.
Amazing. So can I use memory recall on my system as well?
Yeah, look, most modern cameras now have got the ability to memorize the settings and then recall them just by turning the shoot mode dial. Look, I've even got my little RX100. Sometimes we don't want to go to dinner with the big exchangeable lens system. Yeah. So the perfect companion camera for this is, for me, it's certainly this little RX100. Now, don't mistake this as a compact camera. This is a very sophisticated camera, and whatever I memorize on the larger system, I can actually got a little memory recall on this one.
Perfect.
And this one has this is the 6th generation. It's got a 24-200 lens, and it's even got a little pop-up viewfinder. So when the contrast is really high on the beach, I can just do what I normally do, is look through the viewfinder.
But with a smaller cam.
That's right.
Well, perfect. Well, I'll keep snapping, and you can keep judging my pictures. How about that?
Thank you. Great. Excellent.
Thanks for joining us on the show today. If you want to join the Snap Happy community, head on over to our website at snaphappytv.com. There you'll find exclusive content, competitions, and special offers from our partners. See you next time on Snap Happy, the photography show.